Is it just good or real good? You ready? Go. Okay, so this workshop's a little bit about the history of the how concept and a little bit about how to measure recovery. Okay, I guess you might be wondering, what was the need of a how concept? Okay, why should there be a need in how in the first place? How did that happen? Well, how was originally started for as a process to recover from eating disorders. And eating disorders, people just can't agree on what the solution is. They can't even agree on what it should be called. You know, is it compulsive eating? Is it compulsive overeating? Is it sugar addiction? Is it carbohydrate cravings? Is it food addiction? Whatever. Nobody can come up to any, you know, is it bulimia? Is it anorexia? Well, it's a bunch of different phenomena. So, they wanted to concretize. You see, there's a number of different ways of recovering from addiction, theoretically. One is abstinence, where you put the substance down, period, no questions. Another one is methadone maintenance, where you substitute another drug for the drug that you're addicted to. Okay? Very crazy process, and if you've ever been in a meeting where people are doing methadone maintenance, they're bouncing off the walls. They have no emotional sobriety. A third method is controlled use. Alcoholism, people in AA know that doesn't work. It doesn't work, but they always try to, you know, get somebody. Oh, and there's another one called harm reduction. If they think the population that's addicted isn't worth going through an abstinent process, they say let's reduce the harm that the substance does to them. Okay, but theoretically, the one that works the best is abstinence. Now, abstinence means one thing, that you have a clear idea of what you're abstaining from, and there's a public side of it. In other words, everybody holds you accountably. In AA, if you drink, people will say, hey, you just missed your day count, you got to go back. The same thing with NA, if you use any drugs. Now, in food, it's very difficult. So what people were doing in food is they had a private abstinence, something that they decided for themselves. If I eat more than 3 cookies, it's a slip. But if I only eat 2, you know, or whatever. People make their own up food plans. Some people are bulimic, some people are anorexic, some people are extremely heavy overweight. There are different issues, different food plans, different abstinence. Same like in sex and love addiction. Everybody has their own particular abstinence of bottom line and top line. It's different for everybody that comes in. So, and that can be problematical, especially with the process addictions. You know, how do you know if you had an Al-Anon slip? There's a joke. If you thought about the person more than 3 seconds, you just had an Al-Anon slip. Okay? So, you know, there's a, you know, but does that mean you go back to day one? No, they don't even count days now. Al-Anon, okay? So the point is, this was an attempt to specify concretely a way of what to abstain from. So they had a specific food plan. Also, Fred Schneider, who started the program, he started this program at a time in the history of the steps when very few people were using the steps in any kind of a formal way. Because in general in New York, they just didn't use them anymore, not like they did out here. California never really went that way. They didn't swing that way. But in New York, certainly things were different. New York, everything is different. So anyway, Fred didn't really understand how to use the steps. So he came up with his own thing. He figured if there's a way to really study the steps carefully, through methodical use, that you would get the grace to abstain, because he didn't understand really what to abstain from. Because the philosophy of food addiction is that it's so mysterious what it is. There is a medical model of food addiction, but nobody believes in it. That's the problem. Because it comes from orthomolecular science, and those guys were discredited. Even though they created all the holistic health movements, Whole Foods and all that stuff, in general they were discredited because they also had part to do with inventing LSD. But I don't want to get into that. So they're discredited. But those are the guys that created the concept concept of food addiction. So what happened is, and the reason I know this, one of my sponsors was a colleague of VERDES who created that program, and one of my doctors was the guy that hired him for a rehab, and then fired him later because he wouldn't do certain things. But anyway, Fred's idea was if you answer certain questions while you're in detox on a daily basis, call a sponsor up every day. These are musts. You gotta call them every day, do a question a day, call your sponsor a day, weigh and measure your food, follow a specific food plan, make 3 outreach calls a day. These things will give you the grace to be able to not eat that particular day. That's an unusual concept, because mostly very few alcoholics will say, the things I'm doing every day keep me sober. There's an abstinence, there's a withdrawal. There's a, withdrawal, we have to withdraw, And so in this way was a sophisticated way to try to trick yourself. They believed that the higher power would then keep you sober. Okay, so he created these questions and he created this process of how not only to do the steps, there's a whole 3rd step process with candles. It's wonderful stuff. It really is. They take you, you did the first 3 steps, you have candles, and you have a whole ceremony. It's wonderful. It's absolutely glorious thing to do. But what happened is, because of certain legal requirements of not having food plans, OA finally kicked them out of OA, and they have their own program. Now, the unusual thing is that they have this book called the Sponsor Guidelines, which has all these questions. Now, DA, many, many years ago, was in a quandary. They didn't know how to do the steps neither. They couldn't come into agreement how to do the steps. So some people that were in Howe in California suggested, why don't they use the Howe method, just cross out compulsive eater and put down debtor, and then we'll have the steps. And that's exactly what they did, and that's what the yellow booklet is in DA. It's exactly what the yellow booklet is. But they didn't use any of the other books. Fred wrote a bunch of other questionnaires, and then if you answer these questions on a daily basis, guaranteed you'll understand the big book, you'll understand addictions, and so on and so forth. Now, I don't know what the how concept is here in what they're doing, but I think it's probably the same thing where you prescribe certain amount of calls on a daily basis, you choose an abstinence for yourself, and something that you're abstaining from on a daily basis. And by the way, that is something that is sort of measurable, because and I always say this, and there's very few people who agree with me on that. They think it's too esoteric. In the UA pamphlet, it says, Underearners Anonymous is not just about under-earning, it's also about underachieving and under-being. Now, under-earning, what you see in alcoholism, what you track is you track alcohol. You do not have alcohol. In food addiction, you track the food. You weigh and measure your food. Debting, you measure, paying your bills, things like that. Every program you measure something. There's something you measure. So in under-earning, you sort of measure your money, but you also measure your time, because if you don't control your time, you end up not showing up for earning money. So you're measuring money, what you're really doing on a daily basis, And in the underachieving, what do you measure? You measure your goals, whether or not you're achieving your goals. What are you doing to achieve your goals? You name your goals. If they're vague, if your goals are vague, then you're not going to be able to measure them, because you can measure your goals on a daily basis to see if you're getting closer and closer to your goals. In the underbeing, what you can also measure, first of all, you have to decide what that means for you and what aspects of your life have to do with your beingness. I think it has to do with my sociability, has to do with my meditation, my concept, my work with my higher power, all of that. Now, I can quantify that and say, okay, if I meditate 5 times a week, then I hit my goal. So I can quantify even my beingness. You know, I'm going to go to yoga, or I'm going to go to the YMCA. In the next 60 days, I'm going to go 30 days to YMCA. This is a beingness goal. In other words, that's something I can quantify. That's something I can measure. So all of these things can be measurable. And to, I think, a certain extent, how is a way, an attempt to create concrete measurable things and then concrete behaviors that then need to be done on a daily basis to give you the grace of being able to recover from under-earning. So it's an attempt, a group process, where the group decides by group conscience that you do all these different things, and then you just go ahead and do them. And it really does work. It's just not a private private way of doing it. So I support entirely. I don't know what the construct is, but theoretically I understand what it's based on. Now also, UA how has nothing to do with the eating disorder how, because the word how is not copyrighted. So anybody can do anything. You know, we can have AA how if we want, and it has nothing to do with the original construct that Fred Schneider and the other founder had created in that particular program. So I only have a couple minutes left. Open for questions. Questions at the end. Okay. All right. Sure. Okay, if that's the case, I don't think you have anything more in particular to say, so why don't I introduce Bella to you, and then we can have a couple more minutes at the end for questions. Come on, Bella.
Stop smiling. Okay, are we ready, Dave? Hello? Okay. Oh, hi everybody, my name is Bella. So, it would help, right?
Yeah, I think you need to go like this. And it needs
Oh,
right.
oh.
Yeah, so it needs to be right in front of you. So.
Okay, all right, good. This looks like it's going to punch me in the nose. Okay, all right, thank you. So great. So there you have the historical perspective on how. And I think it's great as far as it goes. And what I want to talk about is the principles and the practices of a how program and how that might help some of the vagueness that you might feel about under-earning. One of the things that came up in this conference earlier is that despite the fact that we are 7-8 years into this program, a lot of people really don't know what under-earning really is, what abstinence is, what sobriety is. When people say, I have X number of days of sobrieties, what does it mean? Does it even mean anything? And what I will say might be a little bit contentious. I don't actually believe that it does mean anything. But I do find how to be a fascinating concept. Recovery to me is about two things. It's about the steps and it's about the tools. Now, a lot of our languaging around under-earning is a type of away from strategy. We recover from under-earning. And I've always thought it a little bit unfortunate that we don't speak about this movement towards prosperity. And I'd like you to keep that in mind, because I'm actually not here to advocate the UA How program that comes out of New York. The most I'll say about that is that it's one version that you could use, but you can also create your own. The idea is that if you were going to run a business, if you were going to bake a cake, if you were going to go for a walk, you would have some way of measuring how you were doing. You would have some sort of destination. Now, the process through the steps is what it is, so I'm not really going to talk about that. So how is really about the tools. Now, I'm not even going to ask for a show of hands, but how many people work more than, well, yes, I will. How many people work more than 2 or 3 of the tools on a consistent basis? And that can't include time recording. No. On a consistent basis, like a couple of times a week. And it can't include sponsorship. It can't include keeping your numbers.
And how do you work self-esteem?
Not even going to go there yet. Not even going to go there yet. So it would appear then that the majority of people in the room don't actually use most of the tools on a consistent basis. I'm going to put forward an idea that the tools are part of the backbone of this program. And so if you're not using them, your spine may be a little bit out of alignment. And hence your walk through the steps may not be as profitable as you would like. In a moment, he will flip this around, but the main thing here that a HOW program addresses is clarity. When all is said and done, it's about clarity. If you remember one word, it's about clarity, where you can be honest with yourself as to whether you are making the behavioral changes that you need, not to overcome under-earning, though that may be your preferred method of speaking about it. Mine is in order to establish prosperity. So some people operate well with an away from strategy. Others prefer a forward to strategy. Either way. Now, you need to get clear whether you're doing it or not. That is the only value, as far as I'm concerned, of a day count. That you have clarity. It is not sort of hoarding days and saying, well, I have 3,000 days of UA abstinence. I think it's quite ridiculous. Who cares? All you need to know is that in this day, I am clear about what I did and didn't do. So the principle is, I want to prosper. And that's language I'm going to use, but you may use, I want to overcome under-earning. I want to prosper. Now, my spiritual development and my work through the steps may not be something that I can measure in a way that I would like. But I do know which of the tools I use on a daily basis. And I'm not necessarily saying that I use all the tools on a daily basis. Some of them may be weekly. Some of them may be monthly. It is for me to decide what blueprint I want, because I'm the one who understands what prosperity looks like. I'm the one who knows, or at least I think I know, where I need to emphasize my attention in any given point. So the tools that I might emphasize in a 3-month period may be different from the ones I need to emphasize in 6 months. So what I'm saying or offering to you, that there is an intuitive component to a HOW program, which you probably won't get in any HOW program out there, because it is what it is and it never changes. And it often doesn't take into account life circumstances. And some of them will tag on no matter what, which is quite ridiculous in some respects, because sometimes you just can't. But anyway, to give you some idea of what UA HOW sounds like, I'll read you some of their approaches to the tools. So, and I'm not advocating this, but this is useful. So UA tools, and I'm going to read, I'll do time recording. We must be conscious of how we spend our time. We keep a written record to increase awareness and support our focus on goals and the actions required to achieve them. So what does HOW say? HOW says, no matter what, that's what it starts with. for me, cognitively, at that point, I disconnect because it's not true for me. If I have a car accident, what do? No matter what. Well, if you do, then of course you have to start your day count again. So the main thing is not to be distracted by the elements of this thing I'm going to read, which you might feel are a little bit ridiculous. So, how? No matter what. Each day, we tally our time by category, read the totals live, no voice messages, to our UA action partner or another member of UA. We track our time in no less than 15-minute increments. We track 24 hours a day. For example, starting at midnight and ending at midnight. Suggested overall categories of our time include spiritual vision, income generation, self-care, fun, and family. So those are just suggested categories. You may have others. Meetings. I'll only read 3. We attend UA meetings regularly to share our experience, strength, and hope in order to help ourselves and others recover from under-earning. How? No matter what. We attend 3 live UA or UA Anon meetings per week. It is suggested we attend meetings on time and stay until the close of the meeting. Note, if you live in an area where there are fewer than 3 UA meetings within a 60-minute travel distance, you may replace 1 UA phone meeting for each live UA meeting, not within proximity on a specific base, on a weekly basis. So the way this has been set out, it's very rigid. This is what it is. And if you get a sense that you want a way of measuring your progress, this feels like it might exclude you. So let us look at the principles and maybe forget about this particular structure, because you may be able to create a structure for yourself that you can use. I also don't believe in setting the bar too high at the beginning, remembering that, of course, you can tweak it. How is not a religion, and how has to work for you, otherwise it's useless. So, the principle is you want to get clarity. That's it. That's the only reason. You just want to be clear about whether you're doing it or not, and we're only talking about the tools. The strategy. Choose your poison away from, then you're going to be abstaining from. That's going to be your language. Or towards embracing prosperity. You choose which path you're going to go down. It doesn't really matter which you choose. All roads lead to Jerusalem, I'm told, eventually. So, embracing prosperity, you would probably have a good sense of what that is for you because you have done your vision work. You know what it is you want or what you would like. So you have something that is important to you. And it's actually quite important to have that. Otherwise, you could be working these tools like an automaton, like a robot. That is why I say, well, you have 3,000 days of sobriety. What does that mean? I don't know. It's number counting materialism to me. It means nothing. Apologies to those in grey sheet, which is an outside issue. So, abstaining from vagueness. You want clarity. What how also gives you is a structure. And the structure is there to support you, not to force you through a process like a sausage. Because in the early days when you're learning new behavior, it's uncomfortable. So the structure is there to support you, not to dictate to you. It's a discipline. As I heard earlier this week, discipline to become a disciple of self, higher self, God consciousness. You become disciplined. You embrace discipline. If you don't want to embrace discipline because you feel somebody is doing something to you or telling you what to do, don't bother with how. This is about you. It's not about anybody else. It's a choice. The how program, when you define it or you use there, it gives you boundaries. There are things you don't do. As some of our good fellows here and good ladies, we see them weighing and measuring. There are things they don't do, period. They've made that decision. And most of them will tell you in the beginning it wasn't easy. Things do get easier. So you make a decision. Think of them initially as training wheels. Like kids, when we start learning to ride a bike, we probably need them. Eventually, we don't need them. I personally don't believe that one would need to operate this way forever. But you probably will for a few years, and then it becomes natural. It's not a discipline anymore. It's how you live your life. Eddie has also talked about measurement and tracking. So what are you tracking? Are you tracking your recovery from under-earning? Okay, if that lights your fire. I personally would prefer to track how much of my vision is manifesting. There are problems with that, and I have put those on the other side, which is that pure tracking doesn't address quality, it addresses quantity. You may wish to include this as a category in your tracking. What is the quality of, so I rang 3 people today. What was the quality of the conversations? Were you ringing them just so that you could tick the box? This is where difficulty comes in. What if you only called one person, but it was a deep conversation and you were present for that person? What if you only received one call from a person, and instead of multitasking, you were really there for them? So you might want to think about just how much specificity, what is the tonality of your tracking tools. How program usually doesn't include the intuitive. Because when you're saying no matter what, the day when God consciousness says, forget about all of this, just go to the park and feed the squirrels, you're not going to do it. Because no matter what, you do these things every day. So for me, I would suggest that perhaps within your program, if you choose a how program, you decide on a little bit of flexibility for yourself. Maybe not in the first 2 or 3 months, maybe. Or maybe right at the beginning, maybe there's a day you take off. The main thing is to start getting yourself into the habit. And that may mean initially you only do it 5 days a week and 2 days you spend off. The thing is not to scare yourself. So what sort of how program could you adopt, for instance, if you don't like the New York version? Create one. Look at the tools, all of them, not the first 3, and ask yourself, how do I want to work this? What will I commit to? And how will I know I'm doing it? Or you can discuss it with your sponsor, of course. You want to pray and meditate. How should I do this? You can ask. You can ask for guidance so that your how program is shaped to fit you. You see, it's not that most people don't like discipline. It's that they don't like discipline which they don't understand and which is not in alignment with their values, where they don't see the meaning, where they're asked to be robots. So you deny yourself the benefits of discipline because you feel you're being told what to do. And so you fight against it. If you design your own that is U-shaped, you will still fight against it because it's unusual, but eventually you'll settle down. It's a bit like any spiritual program. There's a form of meditation which I love, and a form of prayer which I love. And I'm not a praying person per se, but this prayer is so sensual. I'll do it in a heartbeat. It's very contemplative. It speaks to me. It gets me quiet. I don't see it as a discipline. If you see the tools as disciplines, ask yourself, how could I change the way I see this? How am I prepared to think about it now that is different? And I'm going to take one tool to give you an example of how you could do it. I remember I asked Andrew, I said, what is the origins of how? And he said something about, well, I shouldn't because it's not politically correct, but it's something to do with some region in America. And I thought, well, how now? You know, it was very, very funny. And what struck me is that there needs to be a sense of humor in how we approach this. So I don't know what your values are. I like things that are beautiful. So what is the energy that you're going to imbue in your process? So we have time tracking. Apologies, Matt, but I think the time tracking sheets are pretty gruesome. I do think that they're a little bit ugly. So, it's true, I do. So, I created my own. Color coordinated, lots of boxes, lots of things going on, lots of images around them. The book that they're in is beautiful. I like it. I like tracking my time in it because I get to see pretty things. I will do anything to bribe myself to sit down and track my time. That is how I do it, because I want to do it, but I do not want to feel punished while I'm doing it. I also cut out little sayings on pages, and I stick them in, and I forget about it. And maybe in 2 or 3 weeks' time, it's this week, and I've cut out something in advance, and there it is, encouraging me. So my time tracking diary journal is a beautiful book. And some of you saw my vision book. It's a beautiful book. So you may need to create beauty. If your home is cluttered, you may need to create somewhere where you go every Sunday to do your time tracking, away from the chaos and the neighbors and the cats and the kids. Maybe you just need to go somewhere. So take care of yourself. What do you want to achieve? You're not just time tracking for the sake of it. As Eddie said, what are your goals? What's your vision? Do you know? Will you make time to know? What does time tracking mean to you? For me, time tracking is tracking my life. I want to be present. I want to know what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. I want to know how I feel. I want to remember, I don't know where I was 2 months ago. I want to see it back and forth. The other thing that I add in my time tracking, I do have an automated system as well, though I prefer the hard copy. I have pop-ups. So, because sometimes, even though I'm time tracking, I will forget that I said, in such and such a time, on such and such a date, I am taking time out. I'll forget about it. So I track forward for myself, so I don't have to remember everything in the day. I make it something which nurtures me, and this is what I invite you to do. You know, this isn't complicated. It really isn't rocket science. You don't have to work all the tools at once this way. You don't have to work it in the New York UA way if you don't want to. But give yourself the gift of discipline. As we say, we are so undisciplined. But it's because most of the disciplines we are subjected to have nothing to do with us, or we don't know how to make it personal and relevant to the vision that we want. And I would strongly advise people to really consider this. What do you prefer, away from, abstaining from, or towards embracing prosperity? Use the language which lights your fire, which makes you want to get up in the morning, which makes you want to reach out to 3 people and make calls a day, which makes you want to save, because guess what? In 6 months' time, you've already decided you're going to Dubai, or you're going to get a subscription to a magazine you've always wanted. Use it so that it is relevant. Don't become a machine. Don't become a machine. And please, please don't tell yourself no matter what. You're not a child. You're not a child. You will do the best you can every day. And some days it's going to be imperfect. And then you'll get back on track. So a how program is the program that works for you. If you don't know how to create a how program that works for you, ask people. Ask within. Take the tools. Remember what I said about the backbone, the spinal cord. People talk about the steps as being the backbone, the spinal cord. I don't think that. I've never believed it. I feel that the steps are the energy that flows through the spinal cord. I see the tools as creating the structure. And I want for you what I want for myself, in that, for instance, working on this particular event, I wouldn't say that we have had a how program to bring it in, but we've certainly had a very disciplined program to bring it in as a project. And you consider your life to be that. If you have a vision and you've identified the first one or two things that are just the things you must have out of life, then you must get disciplined. There is so much in life to distract you. There are so many people to distract you. And you will be the prime person who will distract yourself. So do yourself a favor. Being disciplined is actually a kindness to yourselves. And it's you saying, my vision matters. This is why I do what I do, and that's why I don't do what those folks over there that I don't know about are doing. This is why I don't spend 2 or 3 hours watching TV anymore. I don't have the time for that, and I don't want it showing up on my timesheet anyway, that this is what I did. So Eddie and I can take questions now. I've got a little bit breathless, so I think Eddie will go first. Yeah, okay, so if you do have any questions, I mean, the main thing that I wanted is to show you that it's not really a scary thing at all.
Hi there.
Hi.
My head is exploding,
Oh dear.
and I'm thinking of what porn site, what I could eat, what drug I could do to just calm down, because I can't do all of this by next week. Where do I start?
Thank you. Thank you. Eddie?
Oh, read the tools, read about the UA pamphlet, just get yourself familiar. Ask yourself, what are your under-earning behaviors? In other words, do a first step. What are your behaviors? What are your thoughts that put you in the under-earning and the cave conundrum? And then, of course, the program really is about abstaining from those things. The odd thing about it is some people have to get really specific with that and have to do a formal first step. And other people can just say, you know what, I'm an under-earner, and it can jump. It really depends on how sophisticated your ego is and how easily you can flip back into denial, into forgetting. It's a disease of forgettingness. So the more you do a formal first step, really writing the behaviors, your thinking, your whole system down and nailing it, the bigger picture you got, the more likely you're going to have a possibility of abstaining, because you really have to let go of those behaviors. You have to abstain from them.
My disease wants to do all of that by 4 this morning, or however long it takes, and not rest, and yeah, just feeling the push.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's doable. But, you know, good luck trying. I support you, you know, if you want to try. I would say easy does it. That's what they say in the program, you know. But you do have to. Have you ever done a formal first step?
Yes.
Yeah.
Times in other programs.
In this program?
Never in this program.
Well, then that's where you start. Start with a formal first step, find a sponsor, or even an interim sponsor.
I found one today.
Yeah. Okay, well then you're great. He's going to ask you to do a formal first step. Maybe he's not going to use that terminology, but he's going to ask you to do that. You're in good shape.
Okay,
You're here.
Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to add something else on that question, Bill. If you want to do everything by 4 o'clock this evening, I'm a great advocate of them. Try it. If you try it once or twice, you'll realize that it doesn't work, and then you can drop it. Try it. The other thing is that I would keep it very simple, exactly as Eddie says. Keep it really, really simple. Really simple. And that's probably the most difficult thing for highly intelligent people to do. Yeah. Hi, Maggie.
Thank you so much, both of you. I learned a lot today. I had an experience. I lived in an area for 5 years where I watched the OA how people, and then I watched the OA, the regular OA people. And for a while, the OA HOW people all had way better abstinence. They were really doing great. They all looked hot. They all had boyfriends. Everything was fabulous. And then somehow everything changed. And this is a small sample, but it changed for all of them, and they all became grossly obese a few years later. I've been studying brain science, just reading popular books about brain science, and I'm well aware that there seems to be a lot of this seems to have to do with kind of like our neurochemistry. So what I'd like to, I don't even know if this is an appropriate question in this format. Maybe I should take it to academe, but
Yeah.
I'd like to know whether there has been research on the how sort of conceptual structure, whether that is more effective than a gentler, softer approach, less structured approach.
I think we need to keep this.
Huh?
We need to keep this UA specific.
Okay, Bella doesn't think it's, I'll talk to you offline if you want.
We have a few people with questions. I know we're at time. Could we extend a little, or? Thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Karen, recovering under-earner.
Hi, Karen.
And no, thank you both very much. I'm actually in the How Food program, and I do what I would call a relaxed version of that. We'll just leave it at that. And I completely agree with you, Bella. And I heard of UA How, and I go, there's no way in hell I'm joining 2 How programs. My head will explode. But I have kind of done what you say and think, okay, what makes sense for me? And my standard is 1 outreach call a day. That seems manageable to me. But as far as the timesheet goes, I'm in Excel. I love Excel. So I put Matt's, it's not Matt's, but the timesheet in Excel, and then I color code like different areas of my life. So like earning is green, and spiritual is purple, and home maintenance is gold, and I love it. It's like filled with colors, and I can I do total up the hours, so there is a quantitative, but I could just look and intuitively kind of see, well, gee, how am I spending all my time? So I really, really love doing that. And now this is more of a question for Bella. And by the way, thank you too for your talk I think it was yesterday afternoon. And as far as vision, my vision is not at all how I earn my living right now. I want to be a writer, and I'm just scared to death. I'm scared to death of that, and the only way I ever do any vision work is if I'm in a class that focuses on it. So I would love, I don't know, I would really love any experience, strength, and hope you may have about how to just get started in that, or how to, I don't know.
Right, and this again is how to get started. Well, how is right there, because initially you will, if you accept the fact that you're frightened, then you can actually start slow, but you can block out the time in advance for yourself. You can make it a pleasure. Maybe you don't start writing. Maybe you listen to videos by a writer that you like, or watch them, or read a book, or go and see a movie from a book and critique it. There is a content that you can place in those boxes which gets you past the scaredy cat part. And you're still tracking. You're on track. What you put in those boxes is down to you, and it can be as creative and as fun as you need it to be.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think we have time for maybe 2 short questions, just really short. I know, Sonia, but...
My name is Chris, under-earner, and what I brought out of this was I really liked what you said. Don't be hard on yourself, and what I see is do something with purpose, and what I related so much of this to, and if anybody wants to write this down, is it's Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And he talks about you need 10,000 hours to do something, to make that to be good. And he went marked Bill Gates. He figured out his hours, how many hours to get this together. And the Beatles, and he marked it by Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. That's their best album ever. and 10,000 hours. So I just, if you look at what's a big landmark is a year for abstinence and a lot of these things. Well, there's 8,700 hours in a year, so that's close to your 10,000 hours. So I like that. I kind of wanted to make that as a comment and then see what your reaction or thoughts are of what mine is. Try to keep it short and simple.
Well, people have studied recovery, and there's something that happens in the first 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, and it's across the board no matter what the addiction is. It's called the genetic chart of alcoholism, and they cross-reference with food addictions and so on and so forth. There's significant things that happen in the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year. AA even knows, they say it takes 5 years to get your brain back, and then 10 years to realize you never needed them. So it's like, there's the colloquial wisdom and then there's the scientific information. They always are spot on the same. There's so much wisdom in the verbal traditions of like AA. We spent a lot of time yesterday talking about cross-sponsorship, cross-gender sponsorship, and the 13-stepping. And my man back there said, "Why don't you just say the AA slogan, which said that when you're considering having in 13-stepping, he said, well, the odds are good, but the goods are odd." That tells you everything you need to know, right? The odds are good, the goods are odd.
Thank you very much, Matt. Could we steal a bit of your 15 minutes just so I could answer this question?
I just gave up 5 of the 15.
Oh, so now we only have 10. I'll speak with you. Oh, yeah, I'll speak with you. Thank you very much.